Hello, you have a prepaid call from
Keith Jesperson,
Bruce Davis,
Patton Clark, Robert Barno.
What's your friend?
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of The Lighter Side of Serial Killers. I am your host, Keith Rovere. Thanks for tuning in. This is episode number 2. Our first episode was with the pig lady, Susan Monica, from a 4-hour police interrogation. I was on one of those rabbit holes on YouTube, like I'm sure you guys go down too. I definitely check out it. Put the link in the description to watch that 4-hour documentary. So that was the first episode. A lot of great feedback, a lot of new followers. I think about 700 followers now. So keep it up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff on here. And check out the audio podcast. I've been doing that for a while. Plenty of episodes up. We're up to season 2 on that. A lot of great names, a lot of famous names. Kind of why I do what I do. Not just to promote prison rehabilitation, not the punishment style that gives the recidivism rate. The odds that they're going to reoffend when they get out of prison is like 70% here in America. Because punish style, I promote positive reinforcement, more of a reward-based system to help these men and women with their rehabilitation. So when they're released, they're back a normal member of society. They're not going to commit more crimes. So you've got to think, somebody who's robbed a bank or stole a car is in the same facility as a serial killer, a very violent offender, gang member. So when they get released, they're under the same torturous conditions as some of the really true psychopathic people there. So I promote positive reinforcement. Another reason why I do what I do, I reach out. I just don't call up serial killers every day just to be their buddies. Although I've built many friendships over the years, believe it or not. But it's my way of helping the rehabilitation process. Dana Gray wrote the foreword to one of my books, Serial Killers in Heaven, Victims in Hell, ? Examining is Christianity real, or in the life of some famous violent offenders. Through my personal relationship, I'll let the reader decide and if it's true, if their faith is true or not true, and check out that book. But she wrote the foreword to that book and talked a little bit about her journey in a brief way. That kindness and compassion does truly work, kind of why I do. The other reason is to get to know people on a human level, a real level. If all you see is a documentary on David Berkowitz, for example, well, you're not going to know that he has changed his life decades ago. His ministry, his website is world-reaching, and many other violent offenders also. But get to know on a human level. Even those who haven't quite changed their life around, it still gets to know them. Why they did what they did, who they truly are. Because most books are written about people. They don't interview them. They don't make a phone call to see what really happened. The books and the TV shows, the documentaries, they might get the details of the crime right. Though sometimes they don't do that either. But you never know. Like William Howe, we're going to be doing a video podcast with him soon too. I just did an audio podcast with him. Numerous victims that he had. A book was written about him that was all wrong. The first couple chapters, before you even read the chapters in the first couple pages, the author even says, I'm making a lot of this crap up because I really don't know. Like the name of the grave site. He didn't name a grave site. He didn't name his van, this murder van. It was all made up. These fictional conversations between him and a jailhouse snitch. It's all fake. It's all lies. It's all to sell a book. Nothing about that is true. He didn't call it his garden. It's just silliness. To get to know the facts about cases too. And get to know them on a personal level. Some of you would be surprised that, like, if you didn't know their past, like Keith Jesperson, there's a piece of his artwork right there. That's his Melting Mickey, the logo for my show. If you didn't know what he's done, he's like the funniest guy. William Howe, he's hysterical. I talk to him every day, whether it's an email or over the phone. Not excusing what they've done, and nothing like that. Again, it's all about rehabilitation and future victims. Some of these men and women are going to get out. Certainly a serial killer is not going to get out, but they still have an opportunity to reach the public. Like Charles Tex Watson, David Berkowitz, they've reached thousands of people. You can read about, they both have websites, so many testimonies how they were encouraging people. Hey, I used to live a life like this, And now I've changed, and this is why. This is what helped. Robert Bardo, who killed Rebecca Schaefer back, I guess, in the 80s, who's been on my audio podcast. Again, he doesn't feel empathy, but what has helped him at least understand better? What programs help him understand better? So that's what we talk about on here. But now with the video podcast, now you can kind of put a face. Now, it might not be the clearest audio in a lot of instances at prison facilities. The apps are only so good. But at least you get to put a voice, to put a face to them, to really get to know them as not just the boogeyman. Now, I know there's a lot of people, I still get negative comments all the time. They don't deserve kindness. They don't deserve redemption. They don't deserve rehabilitation. I get it. If you're the victim of a violent offender or a family member, if you lost, I get it 100%. I'm just saying some of these men and women are going to get out. And if they do get out, who do you want living next to you? The monster? Somebody who's like 3 times the monster they were when he went in, or somebody who at least now can be a productive member of society, who now knows kindness, compassion, and is no longer a threat to society. You've got to think, because somebody who's robbed a bank or in the same prison facility treated the same way as somebody who's killed 4 people. So when that guy who just robbed the car, or how about this? How about those who just got caught with a little pot? Some states you're going to do years for having a couple joints on you, let alone you have like an ounce of pot, and they're still in prison. They still haven't let them out. Because it's legal now, but hey, they're doing 10 years because they had a 1/4 ounce of pot or something like that. Not even selling, just having it on them for recreational use. But when that person gets out who had a couple joints on them, who's been a roommate with a serial killer, a violent offender, or somebody who's high up in the gangs, now that person's going to come out. He's ready to kill. That's why the recidivism rate is ridiculous here in America. Again, we'll get into that in future podcasts. Dana Gray. One of the more popular female serial killers. I'm going to be shooting a video podcast with her Tuesday, and we're going to be talking about the other death penalty, life without parole. Is it moral? We're one of the few countries that actually have life without parole, because some of these men and women are rehabilitated. Do they deserve a second chance? Don't they? I mean, again, I'll let you guys decide from that. I want to present from some facts, some statistics on a few things, specifically women going through life without parole. Maybe we'll touch a little bit on transgender issues in her prison too. We'll see how that goes. I said I'll be Tuesday. I was talking to her last night on the phone, and she's also been on my audio podcast a bunch of times. We're up to season 2 now. We're proud of that. But the video podcast, is a little something different. Everybody has a podcast out now. It's all one big, great true crime family. I just wanted to do something a little different, not just coming on here to talk about cases, which is fine too. I love the ones, a couple of people drink, a glass of wine, talking about some crazy crimes, the whodunits, and that's wonderful. I love it all. Mine just a little bit different. I actually have serial killers call me for the show, and now we're going to be doing some, video also on that. Also, I know a lot, probably 20 people or 30 people at San Quentin prison on death row. We're going to be first I have to get approved for actually a visitation, like in-person visitation. That allows me to do the video visitation. So in a couple of weeks, I already have 3 or 4 people who agreed to come on. So I'll leave that as a surprise, and for a little bit later, Miss Dana Gray's coming up too. But today, the vampire of Paris himself, Nico Claux, he is now out of prison. This is the prime example. Learning from people who have committed murder, who had the desire to kill multiple people, he has the desire to kill, a spree shooting, so to speak. And we're going to get into that with him. Now, this wasn't recent. This was a little while ago when I had a TikTok page. They banned me from TikTok. And not that I was saying negative things. I guess just what I do just offended people, and they kept reporting me. And I had almost 10,000 followers, and they just shut the page down. And a lot of other negative things from hearing about TikTok and the creators and some things. So I decided not to do that format. But with TikTok, you can only upload a few minutes at a time. So we did a Q&A between me and Nico. I sent up a bunch of questions and he answered in video format, and it was really fun. We had a real good time with it. So I'm just going to represent the questions to you, because I just don't want this video just to fade away because the TikTok's not there. I still have the video from that. So I'm just going to edit it in a way so you can still hear him answer the questions that I had. He's in Paris now, and if you go, he's very accessible on social media. And he'll respond to you if you're kind and polite, not rude or anything. He'll certainly respond to you. Serial Killer Pleasures is his website. Very artistic, in fact. That's the Melting Mickey from Keith Jesperson. I had a lot of my favorite true crime artists from prison draw me their depiction of a crucifix going through the head of a serpent, kind of an image on Genesis chapter 3, almost like good triumphing over evil one day, or maybe it already has happened in a spiritual world, so to speak. But this was Nico's interpretation of that. Look at the detail on that sucker. Blood red, of course. Yeah, signed on the back. An amazing artist. He does do custom pieces. Tell him I sent you. Tell him you heard the podcast here. Check out his website. And we'll get into some of the projects that he has. Again, this was about a year or so ago. So when I asked him about new projects, it's a little bit older. A lot of those projects have been done. But we'll get into more of that. There's some things that he has, for example, on his website. What I want to get, he has human skulls. When we hear about Nico, we're going to hear from his past, a grave robber, and what he's done to maybe quench the urges to kill. Did he actually find rehabilitation or redemption somehow, somewhere? We're going to talk to him about that. But one of the first things I ask everybody when I get to know them is, we know violent offenders and serial killers, some of them don't have the ability to feel fear. In that frontal lobe cortex part of the brain, the amygdala, where they house fear, empathy, the ability to stop yourself before you do something stupid. When they don't have that ability, that's psychopathy. So I asked Nico, one of the first things I asked him is, do you have the ability to feel fear? And if you do, what scares Nico?
Okay, let's put it this way. I spent most of my youth in prison. I spent most of my adult life working in morgues and hanging around graveyards. So it's safe to say that I'm not really scared of anything. What scares me? People scare me, honestly, especially big gatherings of people, crowds, train stations. I don't feel comfortable at all around people, transports. And just, the lack of intelligence scares me a lot, and you see that more and more with this current generation. It's sad to say, but it's the sad truth. We are living in a world ruled by idiocracy, and for intelligent people like me, it's kind of hard to adjust to this, surrounding, because those people, they just pollute the air and the atmosphere with their stupid thoughts and their indigence, moral, intellectual, and cultural indigence. So yes, it's really hard for people like, people with education, and I got my own education in jail. I didn't really get into big studies or anything, but all the time my life has been a constant struggle to be better at what I'm doing. I learn everything I know about editing books myself. I learn everything about paintings myself. Everything I learn myself. And I think that if you spend your life stagnating, or even worse, being dragged down all the time by TV shows and social networks, it's sad, but it's a reality, and this is what scares me. Just the fact that humanity is hopeless. Not that I'm really a huge fan of humanity from the start. I'm a misanthrope, anyways. But I just I don't think that things are going to be all right. Humanity is a sad affair. Yeah.
One of the books I wrote, The Story of You, about Yu Masaki. Somebody I seen on Signs of a Psychopath. I think it was season 3, episode 1, one of my favorite shows. This is total deadpanness during the police interrogation. That's mostly what the documentary was, the police interrogation. A little bit of talking to his mom, too, who have I gotten to know over the years. Very sweet lady. In part of writing that, we go down many roads, not just his crazy life story and his background of horrible abuse, brain abnormalities, recidivism rates, but also looking at people who can't experience fear, in a chapter called Fear Not. That, like one person specific, never gave her real name. I think just went by the letter M. She had a brain that does not feel fear. And they tried to induce fear in her by taking to her like a dangerous, like a reptile place where put snakes on her and all kind of tarantulas and all kind of just creepy crawly things. Took her to the world's most terrifying haunted house with a few other women that took her to, and then played her some violent and just disturbing scenes from different TV shows and movies to try to emulate any type of fear, any type of that emotion from her. You'll have to read the book to find out what happened. But another person I focused on was Charles Whitman, somebody a couple decades ago who went on top of this tower and just started shooting people, just started killing everybody, to eventually, authorities killed him. Right before that, he killed his wife and he killed his mother. And he wrote a note. I included the note in my book. You can go online and put Charles Whitman handwritten letter. I think some of it was typed and some of it was handwritten. Of why. He didn't know what was going on. He's like, hey, please examine my brain. And when you find out when tumors grow and press up against certain portions of the brain, things like this can happen. I found out Nico also knew about Charles Whitman and influenced him in a way that it's pretty amazing. So I asked Nico to talk a little bit about Charles Whitman.
When I was about 21, I was attending a university, psychology classes in the center of Paris, and there was this huge tower in the university that I was attending. And during my free time, I checked the locks for the stairs that would lead to the roof of the tower. And I had spent many years studying mass murderers, people like Mark Lépine in Canada, and all those people who killed in schools or universities. School shooters weren't really a thing in the late 80s, but yeah, that's something that I was fascinated with. And one of the stories that I liked the most was Charles Whitman, who was on top of the tower at the University of Texas and shot many people. So it was my goal to do the same. But then I found a job in a morgue and I began to have other priorities.
There was something that really shaped the way Nico looked at reality and looked at life. It's something that happened at his grandfather's wake. So I asked him, and what was this almost life-changing revelation, so to speak? What happened either during your grandfather's death? Was it about the death? Was it something that happened at the wake itself? What specifically happened that changed the way you view life and really shaped your mind?
The circumstances of my grandfather's death were really special, since we were playing a game of badminton together, and he had a stroke, and a few days after he died, and part of my family blamed me on this. I was only 10 years old, so there was this feeling of guilt when it happened. But what struck me the most during that time was the funeral wake, and the feeling of being in another world when I was in the room where his casket was, and was not so much focused on his body inside the casket, but on the atmosphere surrounding me, and this atmosphere of humility and fear that all the adults around me were, couldn't hide. All those strong emotions that, as a kid I didn't have many emotions, but this, the emotions that I felt, and that I felt coming from all the people surrounding me in the morgue, yeah, they were definitely something that shaped my mind and shaped the person who I became later on.
Now, obviously, Nico is released, but do the urges to kill stop? We hear him talking about the urges to, as free shooter, like emulate Charles Whitman. He has killed. He has, the fascination of working in a morgue and eating human flesh. He used to strip when the bodies were brought to the place, and that's when he got the freshest meat, and he would eat the meat off the body. So do those urges stop? And I asked him very specifically, is it because the artwork, did you channel all the urges you had to kill? Does all the artwork and that creativity suppress it? Do you still have to suppress it? Or is the artwork and everything you're doing, do you have to keep yourself busy? Because if you stop everything, well, those urges come back. And this is what Nico said.
It's safe to say that, yes, I found my own redemption, even if I don't like to use the word redemption because of its religious connotation, but I found my own freedom through art and developing my art skills and expressing all those inner thoughts and intrusive thoughts in a creative manner, and using painting at first, then writing. And there's a fascinating connection between the act of killing and the act of creating. And this is why the artwork of serial killers is so interesting, because the very same hands that killed are able to create something, painting or even writing for people like Danny Rowling or Joel Schaefer, and their writings are really fascinating. One of my favorite books is Pee Wee Gaskin's Final Truth. It's a masterpiece. This is what I'm looking for when I'm trying to find new authors and trying to develop my own publishing company. I have my own publishing company that's called Serial Pleasures Publishing, and I want to develop this approach to true crime, but from the other perspective, from the eyes of the main character that's involved in the stories of true crime. And because if you look at him, if you look at things objectively, the best way to describe a crime is through the eyes of the killer, and there's absolutely no doubt about it. It's obvious. So yes, I prefer to read true crime books that were written by the killers themselves, and or I want to approach true crime from a different perspective, not from the cop perspective or the journalist perspective, because they all lack something. Only a killer will tell you what it's like to kill, after all. So this is why I'm doing the literary work that I'm doing these days.
I asked Nico, since he grew up in many different countries, his father traveled around the world, if that influenced him in his artwork. Did he pull from that creativity? Because at such a young age that they have him travel around from country to country, especially in those informative years, mentally anyway. So I asked him, does that come out in his artwork? Does that help him get creative? And what are a few things that have really influenced you in your travels now and your travels when you were a kid?
First and foremost, I'm a painter. So my influence as a painter comes from Rembrandt and Goya, and more recently Joe Coleman. Those are the artists that I respect the most. I am also heavily influenced by the artists, the anonymous artists who work in monasteries during the Middle Ages and who created those magnificent descriptions of hell and torments inflicted to the sinners. I've always been influenced by them. I'm also influenced by the art of Thai torture gardens. There's a lot of torture gardens in Thailand that depict the Buddhist hell. So it's statues, human-sized statues showing demons torturing sinners. And when I was a kid, my dad would come back from Thailand and show me the photos that he took there, because it was part of his tour when he was there. He used to work for a bank and he would travel around the world, but he was sent to Thailand a few times. And as a kid, those pictures really influenced me. So yeah, I can say that having a father who was a world traveler and having traveled a lot, yes, I can say that all those influences more or less developed my artistic mind in some way.
Nico has written many books, and at the time when I was interviewing him, a book on Richard Ramirez here. He actually signed it for me, a fingerprint in blood, so to speak. A little wild. This is actually he wrote a little note for me here on the back, but this is kind of the logo for his website. As you can see, I'll give that a little plug. Coming up there. But I asked him when he's writing this book, because what the book is, I'll let him talk about it, but it's not just a book about Richard Ramirez. He had asked me and asked many people who have talked to Richard Ramirez, who have letters by him, to share the letters, share some artwork or some pictures of some clothing you might have had or he might have sent you. And I asked him, what was it about Richard Ramirez that wanted him to put this book together? I mean, I'd say he's written many books, but this was very, very fascinating. So I asked I asked Nico, what specifically about Richard fascinated him enough to write the book?
So a few months ago, I wrote this book called Legions of the Nightstalker. It's about Richard Ramirez, of course, but most of all, it's about his life in prison and the letters that he received from fans and groupies, but also people who visited him in prison and people who were just fascinated by his case. He would get something like 50 letters a week. I was one of his pen pals when I was in prison myself, and we had this special correspondence in the late 90s. I'm talking about this in the book, but it's also about other people's experiences and the letters they got from him. So it's interviews of people who have this Richard Ramirez fascination, but also I show the work of artists who were influenced by him and directors. It's a really complete book. It has lots of photographs and never before seen documents. So yeah, you can find the book on Amazon.com or SerialPleasures.com.
One of the amazing things that I've heard Nico talk about, and if you go follow him on YouTube or even other podcasters who either traveled to Paris to see him or caught up with him as he traveled to other countries, he would take them to different cemeteries in Paris and other places too. But I hear him talk about these certain places that, whether it's underneath a church or in other places where I just see bones, like not hundreds, like thousands of bones stacked on top of each other, very exactly, like in layers and layers, and seems like it would go on for like I don't know if it's 100 yards or miles. I asked him, what is that? What specific is it? Because it's cemeteries. I mean, there has to be a specific name for it. But what specifically is it? Or is there a meaning? Is it a spiritual thing, religious thing? When you see those places where thousands of bones are just stacked up, high and high, and it seemed like to run like almost like a tunnel, run for miles or hundreds of yards. And what is that?
So what you have to understand is that we're talking about ossuaries, and ossuaries is the place where they pile up bones and skulls. Usually it's inside a church or chapel, because back in the medieval times there was lots of plagues, of course, and one way to exorcise the threat of dying for the monks was to use the bones and to use them to decorate their churches and build altars, kind of like what Jeffrey Dahmer did about 30 years ago, but with, of course, something else in mind. I love those places. There's lots of places like that all around Europe, mostly in Austria, Italy, and Germany. There's a few in France too, but Paris, of course, has the biggest ossuary of them all. It's called the Catacombs. They are located in tunnels under Paris. So there's two kinds of catacombs. When people talk about catacombs, they're talking about what we call the illegal ones. It's the one that only those who have a map have access to. And I think there's even a horror movie based on this. It's called As Above, So Below. I recommend the movie. And I don't really like those catacombs. There's bones, there's pile of bones, but you have to walk for hours in the mud and in tunnels, and you have to crawl through really small tunnels to get access to those parts. They're kind of disappointing. The most interesting part of the catacombs are what we call the official ones. That's the one that you have to pay for, and they are these days you can only have access to them if you book tickets online, which is totally stupid, because most of the tourists who come to Paris don't even know that you have to book tickets for the catacombs. So they arrive at the entrance of the catacombs, and the guy at the entrance tells them, sorry, you cannot come in, you have to book them online, and there's a 2 weeks waiting queue. So that's ridiculous, but yeah, that's the way it goes. Those are the only ones that are worth having a look.
Another thing I had asked Nico, and again, you can go to his website, because this interview, his interview responses is about a year or so ago. So a lot of these projects he talked about were finished already. But I still wanted to include it also, and I asked him what type of projects that he was working on now. This is what he said.
Projects. I have plenty of projects. I'm working a lot on my publishing company, Serial Pleasures Publishing. You can check it out on serialpleasures.com. So I'm specialized in true crime books, but I also do art books with other artists. The next book will be a book on Jonestown, and it will show never before seen forensic photos taken by a US Air Force photograph. So the person who currently owns the pictures got them at a state auction, and they show the autopsies of the victims of the mass suicide. They show the autopsy photos of Jim Jones himself, and it's an amazing book.
Well, all right. Well, there you go. My interview with the Vampire of Paris himself, Nico Claux. Again, you can follow him on social media. He's active on all the major sites, Instagram especially. And you can catch him doing live feeds once in a while. It's always fun to sit on that. Him and his girlfriend, you can follow her page too. She's a real sweetheart. I got former model, or maybe she still is a model. I think she's from Australia, if I'm not mistaken. I forget. Maybe the UK. I think Australian. But she's wonderful. She has a great page, and especially when they do the live feeds, it's really fun. It's always good when I pop on there and he sees my name. He's like, "Hey, Keith, how you doing?" So it's wonderful to see. Again, a great guy. Funny guy. Yeah, I mean, it gets dark. I mean, he's a self-professed cannibal. I mean, there's the cannibal cookbook you can see on his website. I'm sure he can give you a signed copy. Again, it's a piece of artwork that he did for me. He's always doing custom work. If you want anything custom done from him, reach out to me or tell him, hey, I saw Keith's podcast, Lighter Side of Serial Killer. I saw you on there. You do custom work. I need a piece. If you want the artwork done and highlighted in real blood, he can do that. Don't ask any questions. Just ask, I want a little blood on there. Don't ask. Just said I got the fingerprint in blood. Whose blood is it? You don't ask those questions. Just say, I want a little blood on there, and they'll put a little blood on there. So, hey, thanks for tuning in. Again, this episode is a little bit different. Because it wasn't exactly live like it usually is. But I think it's important anyway. I say because TikTok banned me. But I thought hearing from Nico was important enough to keep out there so everybody can hear too. This Tuesday, again, I'll be talking to Dana Gray about life without parole, the other death sentence. And look into that. And before you listen to watch the episode, I'm not sure when I'm going to upload it, but I'll be recording it on Tuesday. And what are your thoughts on that? And get ready to comment. Again, like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff to the channel. But look into life without parole. Do you think somebody who was a multiple murderer deserves parole? What if they really are rehabilitated? Do they still, hey, who cares? You know, they killed a couple people, one person, whatever the crime was, eye for an eye, screw them. You know, we're going to really unpack that a little bit. If you killed somebody, should you be killed? You know, the eye for eye, you get that with that. The Immanuel Kant, the old philosopher, where he was eye for eye in prison. You know, I mean, if you almost like, hey, you rape somebody, you should be raped. You kill somebody, you should be killed. I mean, is that a fair thing to say? Is that humane to do? Again, if you're somebody who has survived a violent attack, yeah, you might say, yeah, kill him. I get it. I 100% get it. But I'd love to hear from you. So comment below what you thought of this video. Again, like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And until next time, see ya.